Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Hue Virtual Chat. I'm Tracy Koga, and it's going to be a great day here in Winnipeg. It's beautiful, hot, and sunny, and yeah, and hey, we still have restrictions, but people are getting their vaccinations, and with due diligence, possibly by Canada Day, we will be sitting out on patios. We'll be able to go to our hair salons and our nail services and all of that. Fingers crossed. Anyways, we're going to start our chat today. It's going to be a great one. Let's open up the doors to all of our guests today. Hello. Hi, Cynthia. Hi, Robin. Hi, Kirsten. Love ya. And I think Sach is here too. There he is. Oh my goodness. You wore my favorite jacket, Sach. Okay, everybody can unmute themselves. How is, well, I mean, besides Cynthia, because, well, England is further along, but maybe not. I'll get to you, Cynthia, about those. But how is everybody doing in this third lockdown? Sach, I mean, the show is about you, restaurants. I know, like you're shaking your head. Like I know, I can't believe it.
It is. I don't know where to start. I mean, I don't know if it's third lockdown or if we ever opened up from the second lockdown, if you will. Restaurants have effectively been closed since October 30th, 2020, which was when that second order came down, and never really changed from there. In Manitoba, at least. In Ontario, there's been in different jurisdictions across Canada, it's been a little bit different. In terms of timings, but essentially that's where we've been. If we do want to categorize it as a third lockdown, I would say right now there's a lot of local fatigue out there. As a business industry, we sometimes don't appreciate, even though it's the number one or number two biggest thing for any economy, which is tourism, business, and pleasure. Doesn't matter where you are in the world or the country for that matter, and Manitoba is no different. Those per diem dollars, those corporate dollars that come into the province are effectively gone. And, at the end of the day, and I love absolutely everybody that has supported us and continues to support us, and it's the lifeblood. But it's fair to say at the end of the day, how much takeout, whether it's from here or any other place, can you do and watch Netflix? It's completely understandable, right? And so what we saw in the early days of the pandemic, and that continuing on to support those restaurants, and you're seeing that now with the closures that are coming across. On my drive to work this morning, there's two very popular restaurants on Pembina Highway that I've seen that have closed. Downtown Winnipeg has 6 or 7 full run restaurants left, with a handful of closures in the last number of months alone. And so you are really starting to see the wear of what's happened over the last number of months or over the last 15 months take hold.
Yeah. So Sach, what's it going to take? And I kind of briefly touched on it today just before opening the doors to the Zoom call. But, if we stay the course and we do our due diligence, I know that the province has launched their plan. So maybe by Canada Day, which that day is kind of coming up more and more things will open up. But it has to open up more, right? It has to be, because it'd be the first stage would be opening up your patio, right? And then, maybe 10 or 15 or maybe 20% inside. That's still not going to help, right?
Right. And so the question really is about public confidence. And the return to plan has to really engage confidence and incentivization. So as it has to be a 3-step process, even beyond what's being laid out for the next 1 month or 2 months or 3 months. You're going to have a certain portion of the population is going to come out regardless over the next 30 days or 90 days. But over a longer track, not only does the public, but the business sector needs to see that confidence come back. And so the 3 steps that the government could take right now would, first of all, engage in a messaging program that is positive, that is talking about returning to life as normal, when safe to do so, right? All variables considered. Second, as the largest employer in the province, whether it's Manitoba or any other jurisdiction in Canada, usually the province is the largest employer. They need to think about very seriously a return to work program and bringing people back, whether it's in their downtowns or their suburban workplaces. What does that look like? And how is it safe to do so? And how can you make sure that the employees are feeling safe when they do come back, and encouraging them? Lastly, an incentivization program, very popular in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, were corporate and personal write-offs. And so, if you're a large corporation, and we've seen this in the business spectrum now, we've seen parts of businesses, renovations, you name it, locally, that have done very, very well. And that's fantastic. And then you've got the other end of the spectrum, places like restaurants, events, venues, that have, museums that have not done well. And so how do you equalize that spectrum again? And so write-offs were very popular in the 70s and 90s, where, corporations that are earning, $1 million. So every 5,000, every $1 million you earn, 5,000 of that can be spent on dining out, going to the museum, events, whatnot. And, this would be a good way to encourage people to get back out again, and also help those small businesses, restaurants, and, the economic engines as well, like your convention centers, like your large human rights museums and whatnot, getting people back in and comfortable into those venues again.
Well, I think that's the plan. But, and that's the hard part, because there has been no conversation. Really, I've felt a very disconnect from our government and the restrictions that come down. And here we are, yes, following everything and trying to stay the course. And yet, yes. I'm going to get back to you, Sachit, on just about downtown Winnipeg and how that all looks. But Cynthia, I was going to ask you, because I saw Boris Johnson kind of looking a little sheepish and saying, well, I think we might have looked, far too ahead, whatever. Anyway, saying that he wants to push back the opening.
Yep. Yeah. So at this point, July 19th is our removal of restrictions. That's what it was announced yesterday. And, it's getting beyond frustrating. And I think if you read just the body language of Boris Johnson, or Bojo, as they call him here, and you look at the way he was beyond sheepish. I would suggest that there was perhaps not complete truth that was being shared, in that moment. And the fact is, it's just really easy for them to have us in this quote lockdown process. And as you can probably tell, I'm getting beyond a little frustrated with it right now. Not because I don't have freedom. I can go out to the patio here. We can dine indoors, tables of 6, which is reduced capacity for many restaurants. But all other venues, theaters, I think theaters can't even exceed 40%, kind of numbers. It's just crazy. It's getting a little frustrated. Concerts, anything outdoor that's large capacity is a no. So, this is supposed to be a summer of festivals and concerts, and they're not happening.
Okay, so who wants to answer me this question? Why then down just south of the border from us, everybody's living like there's nothing that's ever happened? You watched the hockey game last night. Vegas is all open. The arena was sold out. No masks.
Well, I think one of the interesting things is you need to look at the data. And I think, to the point that Sachit was talking about, what we've looked here and went, okay, how many people are really getting sick in, hospitality locations? And the answer is, even before, not many. So why is that such a sector that's being attacked in this way and restricted? Same with, other kinds of entertainment venues. Like, why is that the case? And the data doesn't support it. And that's what's happening is the data is no longer supporting the decisions out. And down south, they've always taken a bit, and that certainly seemed the wrong approach during, quote, the height of waves that come at us.
Mm-hmm.
But at this point, it's kind of like, well, where do you get to? I mean, is July 19th the last date here in the UK? Well, who knows? The data doesn't support delaying that, but it could be. But in the States yet, they're talking about opening up a green lane of travel between the US and the UK. Like how can that be okay? But, other things, the data just doesn't support the decisions that are being made. And
Mm-hmm.
I can see why, Boris Johnson looked so sheepish, because the data isn't. Yet in the US, they're going, look, we got vaccinations, we got this. And guess what? You're all adults, or those that are adults. You decide whether you're wearing a mask. You decide if you're going to socially distance, and you make those decisions. And I personally am in most cases, especially indoor, but come to many other things, I just don't believe it's necessary anymore, and hence the frustration. So I think that's why it's really just that mindset of going, no, you're adults, you make the decision, versus we'll tell you what to do.
Sach, do you want to comment on that? And actually, too, on what is going to happen to our downtown? Oh my goodness, right now it is not good.
Yeah, and maybe we'll talk about the downtown to start with.
Yeah.
There was a report released just last week that counted no less than, and indeed excess of 50 businesses closed in our downtown just in the last 6 months or so. Certainly, if you're a Winnipegger, you know that we've had some high-profile losses of business in downtown Winnipeg, the Bay, Staples. But for me, as a small business owner, what really makes me cringe, if you will, is all the small and medium businesses that we've lost, throughout Portage Place, inside the skywalks, at the retail levels. Those are the businesses, on the ground that really add to a sense of vibrancy, hurriedness, things that are happening downtown, and safety. When you have all those business operating and all those lights on and customers coming in and out and coffee shops happening, that's what makes a downtown. Losing 50 businesses, in 9.5 acres, in our most important 9.5, 10 acres in the entire province from a tax standpoint, is a very, very scary thing. It took a couple of decades worth of downtown revitalization to get to the point we were in 2019, and now it's only taken 15, 16 months to really set us back. Well, I've been here since 93, and it wasn't this bad in 93. So, even beyond that, in terms of being able to now bring those businesses back again and get them contributing to the economy, the system, the whole 9 yards, again, a very, very hard point. And when you think about it, all our big economic engines are here, whether it's the convention center, it's the Human Rights Museum, our MTS Center, all these big pieces are here. And so it's so important to support those pieces, as well as all the medium and large businesses like the hotels, all the venues, all the event spaces. It is a difficult spot, from a jurisdictional leadership standpoint, whether you're the city of Winnipeg, whether you're the province of Manitoba. There's a couple of things you can do. From the city of Winnipeg standpoint, I think the best thing they can do right now is get educated. And that would mean reports being produced and published and assisted by the city of Winnipeg in terms of what's going on in their municipal district. That would be a really good thing for them to do. From a provincial standpoint, I think roundtables with Tourism Winnipeg, Economic Development Winnipeg, other leaders, about what is going on in downtown with local leaders to find out what a strategic direction over the next 6 to 18 months can and should look like. And I think you'll start getting some answers there. Right now, there's no clarity anywhere. And so you're doing exactly what you did in 2019 heading into the pandemic, which is running blind. And that's never a good place from a business standpoint or a policymaking standpoint.
Well, can I ask you this? So, Sach, instead of you're mentioning a lot of local leaders, what about going straight to the business owners, people like yourself? having a seat at the table with these people, because ultimately it's these business owners, it's their livelihood, they know what's happening. You know, I kind of think that they really kind of need to reach out to your community.
Oh, for sure. But, and look, I agree 100%. But, I also understand there's a process and a system for that. And usually the process and the system for that is the association levels, right? Whether it's the Manitoba Restaurant Food Association, whether it's the Downtown Biz, whether it's the Winnipeg Chamber or the Manitoba Chamber. These associations and these groups are essentially funnels for bringing in local leaders and local voices, and really assimilating those voices into something that can be digestible at a leader level, or at least a policy producible at a leader level. What I'm just not seeing is a lot of that happening right now, or if it is happening, then it's happening in closed clusters or closed circles, right? That I really haven't seen. It would be good to start seeing a little bit more policy that is forward-looking over a longer period than 60 days or 45 days. I would love to see stuff that's 180 days, 360 days out, in terms of revitalizing, bringing back, incentivizing, making people feel safe. Those are the key messages that need to be really brought out. Lastly, if I was going to say, supporting reopenings from a provincial standpoint would be a very good thing to do. There's a lot of businesses out there that have been in hibernation mode, whether they're small or medium. Reopening is going to come with additional costs around hiring, restocking, cleaning back up again, putting in additional PPE. For a lot of businesses, those costs are going to be completely prohibitive, or they're not going to be able to do it. We've been very fortunate here at the East India Company. We've been operating straight through over the last 16 months. But if we had to close and I had to restock my freezers and fridge and restart all that, it would be a very high cost. And so I can see that for a lot of business to be able to restart, to get a nudge in that direction might be a powerful thing.
Yeah. Well, Rana, you're always one to go grassroots and, have people have a seat at the table that really are living it. But in your opinion, who should be doing or starting to do some of the planning that Sachit mentioned that needs to be done?
I'm pointing to my right, and because Sach is on my right. Hi, Sach. It's a failed attempt, and we will probably end up seeing it without at least having, whether they're a part of these association tables or whether they are their own tables that come together. East India or wherever, having all those business owners and those leaders sitting at a table and making their own decisions amongst themselves, and then perhaps bringing it to the association level. There has to be something done. But I agree with Sach. I mean, if it was up to me, it would literally be the owners, the business owners, and those individuals taking the charge and the lead. But I've said that about everything. I say that same about the teachers, I say it about the nurses, I say it about everyone across the board. Other people do not know. And it's really, unfortunate, and it's very typical of bureaucracy in organizations and situations to take a hold of decision making. And at times they are so disconnected with the realities of people's lives that what they're actually doing is just perpetuating the same old systems that have never worked in the first place. If the system had worked, if any of our systems actually did work, the situation that the business owners are in today probably would not be as dire as it is right now. But those protections aren't really in place. And I would argue perhaps they've never really been in place. I mean, who's to say that there's not another pandemic 8 months from now? I mean, not to say that we're out of it, but I'm just saying it could be a pandemic. It could be anything that would literally throw the backbone. And when I say backbone, I want to include teachers and nurses and all those beautiful people. But for the purpose of this conversation, businesses, you're basically just throwing them basically on their ass every time something happens, and there needs to be some really creative systems in place at this point, and it's not going to be the same old, same old. It's not going to be next time shit happens, everybody shuts down, and if we do shut down, everyone's just kind of left high and dry, because that's essentially what's happened, right? You got an order from the big guy upstairs who said, hey, shut everything down. Everything just gets shut down, but there was no help, there was no assistance, there was no a little bit of tax breaks here and there, a little bit of rental breaks here and there. That doesn't do what needs to happen. If the goal was survival, no matter what we go through right now, businesses, we need you to survive. We need you to survive and thrive when this is over. That was not the dialogue, and that has not been the questions that have been put forward to anybody at this point. And that's really where we need to be talking, right? Though that's the realm, is even if this is happening now, people don't, because what we're forgetting, and I think Sach knows this probably more than anybody, is that just because on June or July or August long, things start to open up again, that does not fix the damage that has been done, right? Like, that's just people just pressing, okay, let's start again. But starting again doesn't actually recognize all the damage that has been done, all the financial loss, all the layoffs, all the people who've lost their jobs, all the loss in blah, 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 the list goes on and on. And I think that there needs to be a much more comprehensive approach to this. It's not just, okay, what do we do moving forward? It's probably most likely the appropriate question is, what do we do moving forward to make sure you are open in the best way possible, and let's support you in any way we can, but how do we make up for all your loss as well? And that goes for everybody who has really lost. And I can't really think of anyone who's really took the hit more than small businesses, and specifically restaurants. I mean, who really has taken the brunt of this, in terms of finances and in terms of business, would be these guys, and obviously there's other groups of people who've taken different types of blows. You have the nurses who are just kind of done, you have the teachers, and you have all these people, but when it comes to actual livelihood, their livelihood, either it's gone or they're just hanging on by a thread. And that's really where if it was me, I'd be like, okay, well, how do we make it better? How do we fix the past? But I don't believe we have a government whose brain works like that. I don't believe we have people in any of these scenarios who actually think like that. I think right now it's going to be like, damage is done, deal with what you have to, and let's kind of make it average for you guys moving forward. But I don't think Manitobans would appreciate that, if to be completely honest as well. I think Manitobans love their small businesses. I think Manitobans love their restaurants. I think Manitobans, the way that I take out every freaking day since the pandemic, it's unheard of in my house. But I do it to support, right? And I know that there's many Manitobans who would do the same. So if we have anyone's side, we're with them. So I think it might be a very situation that it's the government against the rest of us, right? Because that's what it kind of seems like, right? So I don't know. And lastly, I'll just say, there is a point in time, and there's always that kind of pivotal moment where kind of enough is enough, and people need to start being much more vocal about things, and really standing by the groups and the people we love. And lastly, for real, let's not forget that Winnipeg is such a small family. We all love each other. We all know each other. We support businesses because they're like family to us. When you actually hurt them, you actually hurt all of us. So let's hope that the decision ultimately that come out are the most beneficial to survive and thrive for any first business. That's my take on it. Way more than you asked, but you know how I go.
Well, sorry, some of us are laughing
Susie,
because,
hi.
Hi, Susie, or some of us are laughing, Rana, because just as you were making your big closing statement, you kind of froze and you kind of stuttered. So, so yeah, you were a little long-winded, girl. If you want to repeat it.
Am I frozen right?
Yeah.
Am I frozen right now?
Where are you, anyways?
Okay.
Okay.
I'm in my office.
Okay, so I guess maybe just interference or something like that. Did you want to say your last statement? It was really funny.
No,
I was,
I'm done.
no. I
I'm done
want.
my rant.
Oh no. Okay, so
I'm doing my usual.
okay, so if you hurt small business, medium business, if you hurt Satch, you're hurting all the rest of it. That's the gist of that one. Okay, so having heard from Rana and Satch and everything and what it's going to take, and Cynthia, Miss or Robin and Kirsten, masters of mental health. Uh, well, people losing their jobs, people losing their business, and then poof, okay, you can come back, or here you can start up again. That's going to be pretty tough.
Look, truth be told, I have no idea what to say to this, right? I'm watching people struggle. The whole piece about it's like this, no, it's not, it's like this, no, it's not. Like for anyone involved in that, screws with people's heads. Like and like really, I think being able to chat to others who are going through it is the way through it, because I'm not in that world, right? I can talk about mental health, and having a diagnosis and this and that and feeling suicidal and whatever it is, but I've got my job, so I don't get some of the nuances that are going with people in and out of employment. And I think the piece for me is, how do we engage people who are going through that together to be able to share their common experiences? And I think if we can share common experiences like that, then we have a shot at getting through it, like people being able to walk through it. But chatting with someone who doesn't get it, like who isn't having some of those experiences, like we'll provide some support, but I think it's how do we actually connect people who have common experiences through this? And so I'm always going to talk about peer support until the cows come home, right? That it's super important for people to be able to be validated and express how they feel with other people who get it. So yeah, I think we need to beef up the way we do mental health supports for people that allow that kind of connection, because watching, some people I know go through it and even talking to them, right? It's that piece about, yeah, I only understand so much. So I don't know what to say today. I'm a little weird today. I just want to be clear about that happening in life, and my head's like, but we've got to do something, because we're not supporting people enough. Weirdly enough, though, I do want to say Nova Scotia stats for last year, which surprised me a little. Lower suicide rate than like in a very long time. New Zealand, the same. Lowest suicide rate than they've ever had. And I actually would have thought maybe it was a little higher in places, but I still think we've got to stop doing the same old mental health services, because we do the same thing and nothing's changing. So let's look at something different for a change. That's my piece.
Well, it's very good. Kirsten, always about the family too, right? And my goodness.
Yeah,
That's
a
tough.
lot of things are going through my head that came up that I'm actually really glad I've been part of this conversation. Like Sachit was saying, a provincial initiative to support and promote and encourage Manitobans to reopen when the time is safe and to get involved. My head goes to not only those families and those individuals, the isolation that has occurred over these last several months, pushing 2 years, and how that would play into the connection of people to one another again, not only to promote businesses, well, like businesses doing well and getting busy again, but folks need to connect again. And, you know, I think it was, I think it was yourself, Tracy, that talked about watching the hockey game where there's so many people in the stands. And it kind of creeps me out a little bit. Like I have feelings that I have never had before, and conversations about, well, how would you feel sitting in that arena? So that's, you know, exactly. So that's where the province and a initiative to help everyone start processing those thoughts and come to a conclusion where they're ready to step out, they're ready to support businesses, they're ready to connect, and in turn nurture their well-being and move forward from where we have all been. Like what a simplistic and necessary idea. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say.
No, that's great. Linda, you're a business and life coach, and my goodness, boy, oh boy, when businesses get fully back and stuff like that, it's going to be a different ball game, I think, right?
Yes, and I love this conversation, and I especially appreciated when you started, Sachit. We've never met. I'm Linda. Nice to meet you. You started talking right away about the messaging to the public, and that people need to feel confident to come back, and they need to feel safe. And it's similar messages that everyone's been touching on today about that need for people to feel connected, to feel safe, to feel confident. And I think, Rana, you were, your points I appreciated about, do we look to the government to give us those messages? Or is that foolish at this point, to look to the government to give us a sense of confidence, safety, and connection? I would follow your thoughts that that's probably not where we're going to get those messages. So where do those messages come from? Where are they, and we said businesses, the business owners associations, tourism, Manitoba, I thought that was a great spot. Where do we, and Robin and Kirsten, the peer support, the emphasis on mental health and getting people feeling, going from that isolation to connection again. So, what came to mind was, I would love to hear what other people thought. If you were driving down the road, Pembina Highway, you're driving down the road and you're seeing a billboard right now, what do we need to see? Like, what does the public need to see? And, these things can happen quicker than, there's already billboards out for the 215 children that were found, the bodies. There's an awareness campaign already that's been put out there that is, impacting the public and how they're, how they're thinking about, how they're feeling about Indigenous rights. These things can happen quickly. So I'd like to see billboards out that are promoting feeling safe, feeling like you can spend money again, feeling like you can connect again, feeling like it's safe to leave your home. How do we get those messages out, whether it's, a public campaign through the government, or it's private through social media, through our own channels? Anyway, I'd love to hear what are some billboard ideas? What do we need to see promoted out there?
Sach?
Well, briefly, it's not going to be just one leader that's going to come out with that. It's going to be a concert of different leaders coming together and creating that sense of confidence. And so, in my mind, for sure, you've got the government that sets up incentivization programs like write-offs or other programs. You've got public health officials coming out and signaling green lights on a consistent and confident basis. And then you've got small, medium, and large retail businesses and hospitality business and event businesses downloading current public health guidance in terms of deployables, whether that's shielding, sanitization systems, whatever the newest protocol is on tables, whether they're 6 feet apart or the back to normal or whatever all that is. And so you have a concert of those groups of people and organizations, pardon me, working together to create a fulsome sense of confidence and safety for the public. And that's when you're going to start having large movements. But that conversation needs to start somewhere. And that consultation needs to happen somewhere. And, leadership, whether it's at the provincial level or whatever, needs to start listening about those kinds of things. And to date, I haven't heard about that. So it's not just going to be a billboard or a billboard, sorry. It's not going to be, it's not just going to be single guidance. It's not just going to be, the East India Company putting up another acrylic shield or setting up table 6 feet. It's going to be the concert of all of those things coming together and people working together to make that happen.
Wow, that sounds like interesting. Yes, go ahead, Robin. Yeah.
Do we ever look back and see what happened in the last pandemic? I know it's different because we have very different modes of stuff happening now, like social media wasn't around in the 1920s, but have we actually looked at anything that they did then to promote awareness for people to go out and do stuff? Because we've had this before, right? Are we ever looking at it, or are we going, oh, let's completely reinvent the wheel?
Susie.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of people have looked at that, and from what I can tell, they offered the same kind of advice. Like even Dr. Hinshaw, so from Alberta yesterday, was quoted as saying, this is not a short-term problem. This is going to be a long-term problem. Spanish flu was a problem for 30 years. Right. And so this is something that is going to be evolving and that we're going to have to learn to live with. So that means perhaps, I feel like my screen's really dark. Sorry, everyone. Like wearing masks in public might still be a thing. And for me, it's going to be a thing of comfort, I think, for some people. And then we have to pivot how we do work and how we live and even go to school. So I think ventilation systems will have to be looked at. Employers will have to pivot to a prevention method in terms of working on employee health and telling people to stay home when they're sick. There's going to have to be provincial programs and federal programs to support paid sick days. Like there's all kinds of changes that will need to come from this, from a public health perspective, from a communications perspective, on how we're going to live with this disease now, basically this malady. And I think that, just like the flu shot, we're going to have, booster shots for COVID every year. They're going to change depending on what variant is making headway. So I think that, to go back to what Linda's saying, I feel confident in the sense that we have the knowledge of, and we have a vaccine, we have knowledge that we can work from that. So now it's incumbent upon us and businesses and governments to find ways that people can still work, still go to school, still function with this disease in our midst, basically, because it's not going to go away. We are going to have to adapt.
And I see Cynthia commented that that's already started in the UK, that we're going to have to learn to live with COVID. And I I do believe you, Susie. I think that's the role that's going to happen.
And I think, public health also has a huge role to play in that. So just like we saw with, TB outbreaks, are we going to have COVID clinics, dedicated hospitals for COVID that don't affect the larger operations of a hospital where people can go to get dedicated care? Like, I think those are all really valid questions that governments and institutions are looking at, and resources will have to be put towards that as well. So there's a lot of moving parts to all of these changes, but I think that there are definitely steps in place and history, precedent has been set, like Robin said, that there are ways that we can deal with this and still live our lives. Yeah.
No.
And
Yeah.
hand washing. Yay, hand washing is always good. I don't know why people ever stop that. Yeah, I'll be yelling at people in bathrooms to wash their hands. So, yeah.
You'll just be carrying around your little hand sanitizer bottles for everybody.
Too far. That's right. Yeah. With my mask on.
Sach, I'm going to come back to you. Like you said, you were you've been at this location downtown. It's, you know, it's an institution there. Your mom, she's so beautiful, family and everything like that. Would you ever consider moving from the downtown?
Oh God. First of all, I feel like I've been rude. I just kind of popped on the call. Hello to everyone. I
So
wish this
I
was in
invited him. Sorry.
person. Rana, how are you? Long time no talk. Kristen, it's good to see you again. Tracy, always a pleasure. You know, I would, downtown is home. Winnipeg is home. Manitoba is home. We would never move. And even though it's going through a tough spot right now, you know, you don't give up on it, right? This is a beautiful, beautiful part of our city with so many amazing things that happen here. There's gorgeous green spaces, walkways downtown that are largely unexplored, beautiful sculptures. You've got the convention center, the Human Rights Museum, the Forks, the Exchange District, waterfront. And there's no other part of the city that really has the pieces that downtown does. You know, walking around, you know, it's true that you get sensational stories in the paper for sure that will come out and, you know, they may lead to an impression. The reality is I've been walking around downtown for walks on the daily for 30 years. I've never had an incident downtown that has left me, you know, reeling with safety issues. That's not to say we can't always, you know, do things better, try better, go for better. Absolutely, I think that's always the goal and who we want to be. But it's a wonderful and, you know, beautiful place. Right now, it needs some attention. Right now, we need to be able to focus on things to, you know, make it great again. It's not exactly where it was. We can get there, but, you know, we need to start conversations. We need to understand what's happened here, and we need to make legitimate choices that are going to lead to a better tomorrow, you know, that are real. Otherwise, all we're doing is we're setting ourselves up for difficulty. And I will point out one thing, and that is, again, as Winnipeggers or Manitobans, we're all aware of the Bay, you know, leaving downtown. You know, and there was an offer by the current administration, by the current provincial government, to put $25 million forward towards any developer that would come forward. Well, you know, the reality is that building requires over $100 million worth of renos. No private developer is going to come forward and put you know, that amount of money in because there's no revenue, there's no return. So what needs to happen is government needs to take a proactive effort on its own. It's the largest employer. It can conglomerate or amalgamate, offices from its different administrations and bring them downtown and bring those people here and lead to the vibrancy. It would be easy to convert the Bay from a government standpoint into a very awesome workspace downtown. And, you know, be phenomenal, and it would lead back to some revitalization that's much needed in downtown. And that would be a real step forward from my end. Thank you.
Oh, and so what is going to happen with City Place? Do you know?
Well, right now, as we've seen in other spots of downtown, it really is a matter of bringing people back in. The conversion to office spaces continues and is still going on. What's also important about City Place is the True North Center that's just to the east, or sorry, to the west of it as well. That's going on, and so True North Center continues its expansion with the Sutton Place. There it is, the Sutton Place Tower that's coming up, as well as a retail on the ground. That is a significant footprint for downtown Winnipeg and has really redefined what the heart of Winnipeg looks like. For decades, it's always been Portage and Main, and for some people, it will always stay Portage and Main. But now you're looking at Graham and Carleton, which is a huge place for a bus hub. You've got a lot of retail on the ground there, including, you know, food courts, beer halls, and public gathering spaces. So, you know, you've got lots going on there right now. You know, definitely, and I'll agree with the comment that was made a little bit earlier. You know, if we're looking back to a return to normal in the next, 6 and 12 months, it's not going to happen. I was on a national conference call early in the pandemic, probably in April, May last year. And one of the comments I made at that, and I'm going to paraphrase, but along the lines of, look, if everything that's, being reported right now is going to play out, you're probably looking at a recovery that's going to be, 3 years away, 4 years away. And I recall there being snickers on that call. We weren't doing video calls that time. It was still voice call. And I remember some stickers on that call. And then sure enough, we had senior analysts from Air Canada come out 6 months ago, and they said they did not see a return to 2019 levels till fourth quarter 2023, first quarter 2024. And I believe that's going to be pushed back again. I think to Kristen's point and one other commentator's point, that, there's going to be a certain segment of the population that we've lost them. We've lost them forever, whether that number is a 5% or 10%. They're not leaving their home. They're going to develop a lifestyle around Amazon, food delivery, and whatever else they've created to make sure that they don't have to leave their 1,500 square feet or 2,000 square feet at home. There's going to be another segment of the population that's going to be jubilant to come out. The concern is going to be everybody in the middle, right? And restoring their confidence and bringing those folks back.
Well, that's a long journey. Susie, I was going to come to you now too with looking at, and I guess our conversation now is like looking at post-pandemic, as we were saying, maybe by Canada Day, we'll be able to go to the hair salon and, and those are all just big wishes and dreams. And I was going to say, Sach, your hair looks really good.
Caroline is phenomenal with,
I was going to say,
some clippers. I'm very fortunate. And there's not a lot up there to cut, Tracy. So
yeah. Well, I was going to say you look very well groomed, so I kind of figured Caroline. I figured Caroline had something to do, but again, and I think I mentioned it, and Kristen mentioned it, that it's not again like we're going to open our doors and all run out of the house, maskless and whatever, and everything's gone back to normal. But there will be, I guess, some sort of normalcy. I guess all through of this, social media has played a huge role for the naysayers, for the whatevers, the misinformation. How can we now use it to spread the word, to educate that middle group, as Sachit mentioned, that can waver on becoming hermits or becoming part again of society?
So I totally agree with Sachit in that we are going to see those people who are jubilant. I think there's going to be a huge kind of boom after we're out of the thick of this kind of thing, and we do reach that level of vaccination that we need to start to kind of embrace our previous lives before. Now, that being said, I do agree as well that there are people who are going to be afraid to re-enter society and just kind of what life was like before. And I think, from a mental health perspective, we need to have messaging ready for that as well. And that means for the workplace as well, and for, out of the workplace. So I think that, encouraging people to, again, meet people where they're at, right? So you might not be able to go to a party right away, but you might be able to go to a theater or to a library to meet somebody, or, kind of those smaller group settings. I do think that there's going to be some people, maybe even myself included, who will feel very overwhelmed by group settings, such as sporting events and concerts. As much as I want to go back to them, the idea of it causes me anxiety. But that being said, I think that there is going to be a slower draw for those people who are going to be coming out. And I think too that, even though we've become used to having things delivered and to not leaving our homes as well, I think that there's a part of that segment that is not going to come necessarily back into, but may be drawn back into by those that they want to associate with on a larger scale outside. So I think that we need to be gentle with people who are not ready for that kind of contact, and to use that compassionate messaging to say, if you're not feeling well, stay home. That's, I think, an overarching message we need to give regardless. But if you're ready to come out and you're feeling well, here's what's happening, in your community or in your workplace, or those types of messaging. I think that, again, we're going to have to be very cautious about what kind of language we use. And when you talk about misinformation and things like that, we live in an unprecedented time of so much information, right? And the possibilities of where you can get your information are endless, right? So I also think that there's going to be a bigger push for responsibility on social media platforms, on online platforms, and that really is long overdue in terms of regulation or whatever that might look like in terms of not giving a platform to disinformation and misinformation. That needs to be addressed. That's a whole other conversation, but we definitely need to have that conversation in the future because we've seen what kind of damage it can do throughout this. Also, going back to public health and those communication messages, I think it's really important that we do invest in public health communications as a way of battling misinformation and disinformation. So you've heard Dr. Joss Reimer and Dr. Jazz Atwell say, if you are vaccine hesitant or you have questions or you don't know what to believe and what to think, call us at Public Health. That's what we're here for. We can answer those questions. And I think hearing from those healthcare professionals who are in the thick of this every single day, looking at the data, dealing with patients, I think that's a huge opportunity for people to break out of that cycle of fear and misinformation that they get online. Talk to a human being, talk to somebody who can walk you through the questions that you might have and give you that clarity and that confidence that you need in our healthcare system and in the science behind what's going to give us back our lives.
Yes, and I love Dr. Joss. She's so great.
So great.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I think
And
it's
they're both
true.
great.
Yeah, they both are really, really great. And you know what? I know I would not want to be a leader right now of any organization or whatever government right now because it's kind of a no-win situation.
But I think it was really important that she said that and that
Yes.
she used that language to address those. And I think too that the people who are vaccine hesitant aren't necessarily the ones watching those press conferences either. So it's up to the friends and family members of those people who are hesitant to say, Dr. Joss Reimer wants you to call her. She wants to hear from you. Her and her staff have, the answers for your questions. And, I think we're seeing online even family members are being, I don't want to say torn apart, but they're being put in a state of anxiety and stress because one part of the family wants to get vaccinated and say the other one doesn't. So now will they be able to socialize? Are you going to feel comfortable going to a house full of people who aren't vaccinated? All of those questions need to be answered. And I think that obviously people will have to make choices for themselves, but giving them the informed opportunity to speak to a healthcare professional with that background who can help them and provide them the real answers that they seek is so important and will be moving forward. I have to drop off early, guys. I got to pick up a teenager from an exam.
Okay, yeah, school's almost done. Yeah, well, we will talk about that next week. Yes.
Bye, Susie.
Bye. Save Manitoba restaurants. Order out tonight.
Nice seeing you.
Kirsten, just after Susie's rant, how are things going with your daughter's boyfriend?
Oh, I know. I think I brought that up. Well, I really know I brought that up. But yeah, going back to where there's this divide between families and where somebody wants to get vaccinated and somebody it does not. And yeah, so my daughter got double vaccinated, which is great. I think I'm saying it. I don't think they'll watch this, so I can't say it. But the boyfriend doesn't know, and that was the easiest way for her to deal with it. Kind of a don't ask, don't tell policy. But yeah, so and believe it or not, she wasn't welcome to visit the family home because the parents felt that because she got her first vaccination, which they did know about the first one, that she would be giving off something that could get them all sick. Anyways, it doesn't even make sense to me, but there are those folks out there that choose not to vaccinate and have their reasons. I try so hard, Cynthia, to go to your words of not judging and staying in that place of that's their business, not mine. But still doesn't make sense to me. But
No.
I'm just thrilled that I am just thrilled that my children, my immediate family, is wise enough, and actually we've all been double vaccinated now. So and a couple weeks out, so we're
Okay,
good.
yay! I have a question for everyone here. What happens if you ask someone, did they get vaccinated, but then they don't answer the question? Are they against it? Is it bad to ask someone if they got the vaccine or second dose? Is it not a water cooler talk?
So, maybe briefly, maybe not so briefly. I'm part of the vaccine ambassadorship program with the province. So basically, going out there and encouraging Manitobans to get the vaccine. I think, like any issue out there, you just speak about it from a personal space. You can only talk about yourself, right? You're not going to tell people what to do. You can talk about your own experience. You can talk about things that you've learned. And that's what I do, because you see it right now. If somebody has a strong belief in one thing or the other, you're never going to argue them out of it. You never win an argument. All you can do is, again, talk about what your experience has been. My first vaccine shot was in a pharmacy. Carolyn and I made a date out of it, because that's what you do in 2021. We went down, I think we were there for all of 15, 18 minutes. We got a shot, went out. I went for a 5-kilometer run. I think I had a good time that day as well. Had dinner, went to bed, and there was zero issues. On my second shot was, at the convention center. Again, same thing. I was in and out in 15 minutes, I believe, if at that, and zero issues, and was just fine. And everyone I talked to in my sphere that have had their double dose, and I'm hearing it, I've seen it on this call as well, zero issues, right? What you're going to see at the 30,000 foot level, I believe, as this progresses, is a bit of carrot and a stick. We've seen some carrots already, whether it's a lottery, whether it's another incentive. We saw them down south. Here's $100. Here's a case of beer. I think in some state somewhere. I don't know. So you can see that. I think the stick is going to come later. The stick is going to come in the form of these various V cards that are starting to be coming out in various jurisdictions. I'm not an expert on those. I think you have to be careful with how they roll out. There's some questions that need to be answered, but regardless, those are going to lead to a situation where, you may be able to do a thing with a V card where somebody who doesn't have a V card can't do the thing, whatever that is. There may also be insurance questions. If you're looking to travel, Blue Cross, insurance is not a right. Especially when it comes to extended insurance. So insurance may just come along and says, well, we're not going to insure you. Or the carrier may just simply say, we're not going to put you on because you may be a risk to others. We don't know. So, you've got the carrot and the stick right now. Those are what's going to arguably play out over the next 12 and 36 months, I imagine, especially if we are living in a scenario where COVID is a reality, as has been mentioned on this call already. For the next foreseeable future, for 5 years, 10 years, longer. And so, we have to be careful of that. I think that also extends to our, in a sideways way, to our return to workplace. I was having a very motivated conversation with somebody about what a return to work place environment looks like. And certainly, I think initially you might be having hybrid models. But I think there's two things that are going to be strongly in play to return to work. The first thing is going to be, and I call it the Keener model. You're always going to have that one or two people inside the office that want the promotion, want the contract, want to be under the supervisor's nose, whatever it is. And they're going to be there. They're going to be there in person, and they're going to do whatever it takes to get those things done. Whatever that is, and that's going to lead to again, this urgency for everyone to get going again, and I think that's going to lead to more people in the office. because that's where all of those things are maximized. That's A. B, what I'm weary about and we haven't heard from is the insurance companies who have been quiet for the last 16 months, 18 months, to my surprise, about people working from home, the implications around working from home and hazards and tripping and regulations and standards and all of that are all out the window. I mean, that's why you have office spaces, right? Because, you know, fire escapes are regulated, because all of those things are in place. Safety protocols are in place. This is why you have regulated spaces that keep it. I mean, at some point, guidance is going to come down from the insurers and say, okay, if hybrid's a new thing right now, this is what you have to do. This is who's responsible, and this is the cost. And depending on where that comes in, whether it's the boss, the employer, or the employee, it may be prohibitive. And it's going to be a return back to normal as well. So all those variables have not yet been factored. And again, it's early days as far as all of that is concerned. But that's certainly going to have a play in the rollout as well moving forward.
Wow. So Cynthia, I was just getting back to that question, and they also said another fear I've heard is I don't know what the long-term effects of the vaccine are, and that's so why we're not getting it. So again, I mean, that whole kind of etiquette and question, can I say, Cynthia, are you vaccinated? You know, and if you don't answer, what does that mean?
Well, I think if anything that we've learned over the last 18 months is that no answer is an answer.
Yeah.
So the reality is that there's very few questions that we don't normally ask. Whether they're appropriate or inappropriate is unique to the individual, right? And I think to the question, you simply have to accept whatever answer or no answer you get from the person, but based upon your interpretation, you do have a choice to make as to the level of engagement or involvement with that. Now, I would say in a workplace, in a office setting, what if that person is your boss? And that would make it really difficult, you know, which comes back to, well, what are the regulations going to look like? How is this going to happen? You know, there's many businesses, certainly many international businesses out of London and here, where they are maintaining on an ongoing basis a work from home model or a hybrid model as the new way to work. They haven't eliminated office space, but everybody tells me Canary Wharf in downtown London is really quiet these days. So, you know, I think there is a change to come. But as I put in the chat, you know, this whole idea that I know before I left, I think the group was called Workplace Manitoba. They deal with the safety standards in the work site. And they had not yet published, to the best of my knowledge, but they were working on ergonomic safety standards for office workers. I'm pretty sure most work from home scenarios do not meet those requirements. And that gets back to, well, who's insured and, you know, how is that going to be covered? Because do you have enough chiropractors and physiotherapists in Manitoba in order to be able to deal with all these people who have really bad setups? Or does all of a sudden now the cost to the employer become the idea of actually equipping people at home, right? If the business didn't strategically plan for that, and I know because I had developed a plan 10 years ago, circa 2000, that talked about this model. And the idea was for 12 to 1,500 Canadian dollars, you could equip somebody with the basic stuff that you need to do a work from home based upon, you know, digital technology. And that would include, you know, a proper chair and so forth. I think now we need to talk about adjustable desks. And then you got a question, do they actually have the physical space in their living quarters to do it? Certainly, I mean, in most places in London, you're not going to have it. They're small. They're very small. So all of a sudden now you kind of have this challenge of, well, I want to work from home. I feel safer working from home, but how do you actually execute and do it? And how do you do it in actually a safe way? It's not that the work isn't safe, it's that you're actually not damaging your body by doing it. And I think these are the challenges that kind of come in. But, you know, to the point of acceptance, it's like, sure, you want to do that, but have you thought about all the other questions that come with it? So you can't it's actually, you cannot change somebody. Okay. I mean, I've said that numerous times. And at the end of the day, you have to accept whatever their answer is, wherever they're at, but you don't have to necessarily accept that within your life. And then you have to think about the broader questions of what does that really mean in terms of how do we move forward, and we're doing the work, and where you do the work and how you do the work is not just something you fall into or you react to, as we had to for many organizations with COVID. It is something you have to plan for. And I think that concept from my global travels, what I've seen is this idea of actually having kind of work from home. Think of it, the St. Vital Work Center. And this would be a place that is closer to home, that meets all the guidelines and has proper workspaces where you kind of pop in, you do your work, and then you can go home. And maybe you'll do something occasionally at home, but you actually have a workplace. Winnipeg's not a big city. I don't know that it makes a ton of sense to conceptually wise, but when you get into cities like London, New York, Los Angeles, that starts to make a ton of sense, where you don't have people coming back and meeting in a common, large office space scenario. So those are just some of the tips of the iceberg challenges that we have in front of us. But remember, you can't change anyone else, and you get to make a decision on how you react to that.
Yes. Well, and actually, Cynthia, we do have some workplace spaces like that have, but I don't know how they've been managing through all of this, right? Because I don't think our psyche is into that yet, but I think moving forward, it definitely will. But you know what? I want to thank Sach for joining, and it was my bad too. I didn't, it's just crazy when you do this kind of format, everybody's there, so it's like we're kind of in this big crowd, and can't wait to come and sit in your restaurant and spend time.
In the meantime, do some takeout.
Yes.
It would be great. But before I sign off, I really do just want to comment about what we had happen last week in Canada. I'm sure all communities, all faiths really stand in solidarity with the Afsal family. It's absolutely tragic what's happened out there. I actually spoke to Rana last night, and we were talking briefly about this. And for those of you that follow me, you know that I'm active on social media. I probably put up once or twice a day. I haven't put up anything in 2 weeks. You're just stunned into silence. With what's going on out there, it's so tragic. And I've heard that there's been lots of calls for leaderships and politicians to do X, Y, or Z. And I agree, they should do those, whether they're summits or whatnot. But beyond that, there's something that needs to happen here at a systemic level, at our education level. When you're in a country like Canada, where you've got tons of different kinds of people coming in from tons of different places over long periods of time, decades, it makes sense that there be a cultural component in our classrooms that talks about, because we haven't had that. We've never had that. We don't have that. And what happens is, in a vacuum like that, where do people get their information these days? From The Simpsons or other sources. And that's what informs them and leads to God knows what's in their heads. And so, while summits are a good idea, and that's fine, and informing senior leadership is important, I think it starts with our kids. And systemically going all the way back, having a cultural component in our classrooms, in our communities, and going right from the bottom all the way up. And so that there is that compassion, that understanding, that brotherhood, that sisterhood amongst people, that Canadians are generally 99.9% of the time known for. Again, my thoughts and prayers with the Afsal family. As a parent, I cannot imagine what they've been through. And I'm so happy to see communities from across faiths come together over the last week. Thank you again, everybody.
No, and Sach, though, too, how did your family react? Your mom, your kids?
shocked, shocked. Could have been, it could have been any one of us, right? But beyond that, it could have been any one of us. Why at all? Why at all? There's absolutely no need for that level of horrific violence. And although Mr. Veltman has yet to put a formal motive forward, at least as of last night, as I read, what I mean, what in the world would make this right? And maybe from a purely analytical standpoint, what series of decisions in your head or events in your life lead to this at such a young age of 20? That would lead you to that. I mean, these are the questions, and that's why, again, I would just go back to let's look at what our system of acclimatization, if there is one at all, or culturalization, if there is one at all, is, whether it's here in Manitoba or in Ontario or across the country, or if there's a standardization. We keep saying, ignorance is no excuse. Sure, where does one go to get educated? It is certainly our responsibility, absolutely. But where's the state in all this? And the state has a role, and that role is education. It's beyond 2 + 2. The socialization, the culturalization, of our folks can start at an administrative level. There's not a problem there. At least I don't see one. And we should be open to that discussion. And again, just beyond summits, beyond rallies, a long-lasting, decades kind of process to make sure that this never happens again.
Yes.
Hey, I just wanted to jump in there, and I don't know if there's any type of protocol or policy set up in Ontario at all, but my head goes to the Children's Advocate Office in Manitoba. When there's a suicide or a death of a child in care, there is a huge inquiry that happens into all the events of that child's life dating back to day one. There's a report on the story of Matthew that was released, I think, a year and a half ago from the Children's Advocate Office of a 14-year-old who took his life. That report goes back to what happened in that child's life on day one regarding environment, services, lack of services, education, healthcare, everything. Wouldn't it be so beneficial for this 20-year-old, for some organization to take a look at this 20-year-old and do an in-depth analysis of from day one, what on earth drives, I think a 20-year-old is a child, in my opinion, but what on earth happens to one individual on our planet that takes them at 20 years old to a place where they do an action like this? And my head goes to what a necessary and valuable information a report like that into this incident regarding that individual could have on how we move forward in life, in education, and everything regarding young people in Canada. And I'm sure it will never happen, but anyways, I'm speaking my thoughts, but that's where my head goes to for better understanding, for prevention on the ground level, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking, all of it.
Oh, it is. Rana?
Yeah, no. You know what? So I guess, and I'm going to try to be I'm going to just kind of watch this is the thing. Every time it's a white guy who takes a gun and starts shooting at people, we all want to talk about, oh, poor baby, what happened to his life? What happened to him? Nobody, there's 300 white supremacy groups in this country roaming around. That's the problem. That's the issue. Those are the issues. Nobody gives a shit, to be honest with you, if that guy was shot in the face at 5 years old, because normal people, we all have struggles. How many Indigenous people do you think are walking around railing people with their vehicles, who have gone through the most trauma in this world? That is not that's a, you know, someday in life type of scenario. A week after the fact, the demand should be shut down every white supremacy group and call this what this is. That's what has to happen. Nobody, like, why would we be wasting time, money, effort on every guy who goes up? Then we have, what about the Quebec mosque shooting, which wasn't even called terrorism? I mean, there's more realities. There's other things that have to happen, and I agree with Sach to some extent as well. But I mean, I'm sorry, but like, you know what I mean? 2 days ago, a young Muslim woman got her hijab ripped off in Ontario. This is happening every day. Just because it hit the news for this family doesn't mean these things haven't been happening. And I think I actually brought this up in the Hue Crew a month ago, where there was like this culture in Alberta of Muslim women having their hijabs ripped off and being beat up and being attacked in the parks and blah, blah, blah. I believe I spoke about it here. But there's media issues, there's issues in the movies, where every time there is a event about to happen, they start to do our calls to prayers, and then all the guns start going off. Like, there's a whole host of things that have to happen. Yes, it's education, but I truthfully, and I apologize, but the minute we start talking about a 20-year-old and boo-hoo to him, nobody cares. Sorry.
I was not doing any
But
boo-hooing,
No.
just to be clear. No,
No.
boo-hooing coming from here.
No. What I'm saying is the normal, the everyday response every time it's a white guy is, oh, well, he must have had something happen. Yeah, he probably is a part of a white supremacy group. So let's focus on that. That's the issue. There are 300 white supremacy groups in this country. Let's demand that they're dealt with, talked about, brought to light. I don't know, something. Because that probably will help with Sach's idea about education, because you won't have this false education roaming around through those things. You know, but there are, this is coming from somewhere. These guys didn't just happen to appear. And, you know, so for me, and I know, speaking to a lot of people who are as enraged as I am, but also intelligent and know the laws and know, you know, the mechanisms within which we are working in. I think that there are really big demands that have to happen right now. And this is a very simple one. It's a very simple one. There are 300 white supremacy groups in this country. Call them what they are. Call them terrorist groups. Shut them down. Watch their monies. Watch where they're being funded from. Follow the tracks. Get to the root cause of that issue. Parallel to that, yes, we're doing the educational, we're doing the culturally appropriate, all that stuff. And then sometime after that, after this guy's probably, you know, I don't know, whatever happens to him, who gives a shit. But, you know, at some point, then he'd be a person to study. But if we're going to study him, let's go back and study the guys who shot up the Quebec mosque. Let's go back and study, like, there's a whole host of things that would happen prior.
Totally agree.
Okay.
But
Totally agree.
that's my demand, and I think
Yeah.
that there's a lot of people saying the exact same thing I'm saying. Let's
Okay.
let's call out, you know, let's call out these groups and call them terrorist groups, because that cuts off their funding, that cuts off their educational, the ways that they can, you know, that means if they're going online spreading hate, they're being watched. You see what I'm saying? Like, there's a whole host of things that happen around there. So I think Sach had something to add to that. Sorry about that, but I have to be like, I know that a lot of people saying exactly what I'm saying. So I have the platform, so I'm going to say it.
Yes, and you do. I agree with all three of you. Maybe not quite as radical as Rana, but I do agree that they need to be called out. I truly believe education is the route to where we need to go. But I do understand Kirsten, and I do agree that there has to be case studies to be proactive, and either, you know, we can learn, well, we will learn from it, and hopefully we will not have horrendous acts like this again. So anyways, Sach, I'll give you the last word, or?
Well, again, just, you know, we talked about so many
I know.
topics, it would be very hard to sum all that up. Maybe I'll leave it with this. You know, despite the last 16 months, despite all the challenges that we are acutely and have chronically been going through, the one thing that I think has been universal and that I have seen across the board is our ability to come together, to support each other, to love each other, to discuss when it's important. And that is, I really want to say, a Canadian thing. It's been amazing. Has it been tough? Yes. Is it going to continue to be tough? 100%. But I've seen us come together. And I think that's been a good thing. And we've seen leadership come up at the local levels and at provincial and federal levels to really support those things that are very, very important. And so in the midst of when it's really dark, when it's really tough, you know, don't despair, because there will be something, there will be someone, there will be a plan that does come out, and you see it. You know, we saw it with the vaccine come out when our scientists around the world came out and produced a vaccine, and just again as early as December. You know, we did not have that option going into that month, and the discussions that have recently been raised around decades of abuse around residential schools that we saw in Canada, discussions that have now finally come to the forefront harder than ever around community involvement and where we are all together. These are all positive. These are all positive things from very dark places. And my hope is that you know, we'll continue to have enlightenment across the board. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Sach. Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, Kirsten. Thank you, Rana. Okay, you know, it's been a wonderful conversation. We've tackled a lot of things. So enjoy your day. It's sunshine, it's warm, it's beautiful. And we'll see you all next week. All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Talk to
Tracy.
you
Thanks,
soon.
everybody.
Bye-bye.